Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Up Close on METV. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, station manager for Manatee Educational Television. It's my great pleasure to welcome here today Ms. Karen Carpenter, a two-term school board member who will soon be resigning to move back to her hometown to be with her family. Karen, first of all, I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of what I would think is a very busy schedule to spend some time with us today.
Well, I want to thank you, Charles, and also thank METV for the impressive job that you all do covering everything in the community. And when you suggested this, that we spend some time in retrospect on my term on the school board, I thought, wow, that would be very nice. And it's always good to think about things.
Well, and I must tell you, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about not only the significant contributions that you've made, but also some of the things that you figure are your biggest challenges that you've had to overcome, and the road ahead, too, for the school district. But for our viewers, I'd like to take a little time to talk about you. Where you grew up, where you went to school, and some of those, beginning details. First of all, you're not from Florida, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm not. And my children and grandchildren have been asking me to come back home. And home was originally in Massachusetts to be with them, and I have thoroughly enjoyed my challenges and my time here, but it is time for me to get into the rocking chair and be grandmother. I grew up in Massachusetts in a very loving household. Neither one of my parents, because of economic circumstances, and they got married in the Depression, were able to go to college or to much less high school. They left school at the 8th grade. But they always emphasized the value of education, and for both me and my brother, and core values like volunteering in the community and integrity. That was a hallmark of my early years. I went to a typical public high school in Massachusetts, and did well. I'm one of those people that I like tests. I like taking tests, which is unusual, and I just treat them as a game. And went to college on a scholarship from the Procter & Gamble Foundation, and then started teaching school in Southern California. I really wanted to experience something different, so
you relocated from the cold winters of Massachusetts to California.
Yeah,
that was a unique experience.
Well, it was. I really wanted to get far away from New England, and I loved Southern California and had a good time there for a while. And I taught Latin and Greek.
Now, do they still teach Latin and Greek in schools?
No. When the church, the Catholic Church, got rid of Latin Mass in the mid-'60s and went to the vernacular, then it wasn't as popular these days. But I taught junior high, high school, and state college out there.
No kidding.
So it was interesting. And, I did the typical route. You get married, you have a couple of kids. I got a master's degree. And my master's degree was interesting because I was studying kind of school district organizations and whether their size had any influence on teacher job satisfaction. And I had a statistically valid study, and that's what I did. And I went back and read it, and it wasn't that good.
Was it ahead of its time?
It was ahead of its time, yeah. And I had a hypothesis that said that teachers in small school districts would be happier. And that was totally wrong. Teachers were more they were more satisfied in large school districts where they could do their own thing and teach and not be fussed over by administrators. So that was a revelation. Then I went back home to New England to my family, and my brother was ill with cancer at the time, so it was important for me to be around. I'm always committed to causes, mostly children and families. And
that started at a very young age for you,
it
too.
it did. Actually, that started even before college. We were always volunteering. We were always doing something to help other people. So, because I think there was a core values that said how lucky we were that we had a home and we had enough food and clothes. It wasn't the fanciest of all, but it was to give back. And even with the grandchildren now, whatever little money they earn from babysitting, actually there's a lot of money they earn from babysitting because I got paid 35 cents an hour when I babysat. These kids get $10 and $15 an hour babysitting.
Wow.
That's a lot. But they're to take the money that they have and divide it in three, one to give to charity, and one to save, and a third that they can spend.
What a great idea to do that.
Yeah, my two daughters have done that with their children, and they always they'll help out at soup kitchens at Christmas time. We helped a church in Massachusetts with an event. They have a large program for homeless people. They house them in motels and hotels, and so we went had a Christmas party at one of the hotels where the children were. So that was nice. That was good. You know?
Well, during your career too, as a teacher, working on your master's degree, there came a point when you came to Florida and decided, well, enough of this winter nonsense. I'm going to try to be here in Florida, and your time here in Florida has been very unique. But before we get to that point, I think quite a few people know, but not everybody. But you also have a law degree as well.
Right, I got that law degree in my 50s because I wanted to be a better advocate for children and families. But it's interesting the way I got to Florida, to this area. I came to this area in the early 80s on a job assignment. I was in mortgage banking at the time. I had left nonprofit management, and I went into banking. Sort of coincidentally, one of the nonprofit co-directors with me on the Pastoral Counseling Center was the head of a savings and loan, and he hired me to be the marketing director. And so I came down here to open up an office, and I fell in love with the place.
Of course.
One of the retired SNL executives had lived out in Peridia, and at that time, Peridia, there was nothing east of Peridia.
That's true.
There was just nothing, and I think it was
pastures.
It was a dirt road.
Yeah.
So that was the end of the county development at that time, and that was in the 80s. So I really liked the area. I continued. I went from nonprofit management into banking and did very well. And I did very well because it was at a time when I had two children in college.
It's important.
It was very important. And I enjoyed that. I used to think a bank was a four-letter word, but I found out that it's just another regulated, more regulation in banking than any of the work that I had done. And I did well. And then I wound up, taking care of my elderly parents and relocating back down here. And I was... I ran the Women's Center in Manatee County in the mid-90s. And
you did that for a few years,
For a few years, yeah. I combined that with another job because there really wasn't enough money for one salary. I combined that with the Manatee Bankers for Affordable Housing. So I kept my banking connection with training people how to own homes.
How to apply for loans.
How to apply for loans and how to own a house. And so that was, and I had done that up north in the city of Boston. So not everybody's willing to make the financial sacrifices to own a house.
Right. And not everybody knows, the process, to do that. And to this day, there's still programs and services that are out there helping people try to get into a home.
Right, which is good, which is really good. So, and it's just, I've always been very active. And I've been blessed with ability and friends and hard work. I work very hard.
Well, and you do, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I want to take a few moments, if I could, just to talk about some of the many things that you've been involved with during your tenure here in Manatee County, because it's really reflective of a lifetime of effort. And that's your outreach to community organizations and education and programs, much like the United Way, the Reading Pals program. I want to talk in detail about your involvement with something that's very near and dear to your heart, when that is take stock in children. And of course, with the Kiwanis Foundation and their Christmas in August. as well as the Children's Services Advisory Board.
Yes.
And if I could say that if there's one common denominator in all of that, it's about the well-being of children. And their,
families.
And families and their success, and the success that you can bring to them. And I think that's a common theme among all these organizations that you've dedicated your time and effort to.
Well, I retired in 1968, and I had bought a house in Manatee County in the year 2000, and I retired down here, and I spent about 6 days in retirement. An old friend of mine, Rosie Wiley, from the 90s, was
Wonderful woman.
Oh, a fabulous woman, and like a sister. And she was running a program, AmeriCorps Vista.
Right.
And she signed me up as an AmeriCorps Vista. So I got to work 35 hours a week, which was a lot less than I normally work. Normally, when I worked, it was 50 to 60 hours a week. And I was in AmeriCorps Vista, and I worked for Doug Wagner, who was head of the ACT program, great boss, great guy, at the school district. And I actually, along with 4 other Vistas, had an office on the 5th floor of the administrative building downtown.
Oh.
So actually my office now is on the 1st floor, so I've gone from the 5th floor to the
Down to the...
down. And that's when I really got my nose under the tent with what was going on with the district. And I worked with Take Stock and helping that expand and get formative, because at that point in time it reported to Doug, Diana reported to Doug. And then I was also working with the MTI Foundation, which is off on its own now. So I had those 2 assignments, and I was able to observe a lot going on. You know, when you're kind of around, and people answered all my questions. You know, I learn by listening to answers and asking questions. That's the way I learn. And observing. You can tell a lot if you go into a business or you can go into a school.
Exactly.
You can tell what's going on there.
And also, I think you have, with your background, your expertise, you had a really in-depth understanding of the way things should be, the open and people who are dedicated to, achieving things. But one of the key things, and I'd love very much to hear your thing, at some point, after a successful banking career, after a successful nonprofit career, and working with Doug Wagner was certainly a wonderful thing for you to have that experience. But there came a point in 2010 or early than that, where you said, I want to add my voice and my ability, my background and my expertise to the Manatee County School Board. Tell us a little bit about how that process came to be and why it was important for you to get into that world of not only in-depth education, but politics as well.
Well, I knew Walter Miller was retiring, and I knew him through the Take Stock and Children program. He was chairman at the time of the community council, so nice man. And he was retiring, and I knew I could accomplish a lot as a volunteer 35 hours a week, but then I thought, well, maybe I could push some of those levers of change to improve the organization. And it was apparent to me that the organization needed some improvement. So I talked to a few people in the community. I knew Dick Conard, who had started the MTI Foundation, Dr. Conard. I knew Paul Scharf from the Take Stock and Children program. I knew Walter. I went and talked to all the existing school board members and decided, well, maybe if I can get elected, I could help this organization get stronger, because it wasn't as strong as it needed to be, and accountable to the public. That was obvious. And that fall of 2010, the millage didn't get passed by the public. That was very bad.
That was that rather debilitating for the school district.
Yes, and there were trust issues, and there were adversarial issues going on with some of the factions in the school district, and there were people in the community who didn't trust the school district. And so I thought, well, maybe we can turn this around. So I thought, well, I'll try that. And much to my surprise, think much to a lot of other people's surprise, I got elected.
But that was, during your, this is your first venture into
Correct.
politics, into, elective office. And, you went and, it's a difficult thing. I admire people who run for office because it takes a lot of hard work and dedication, and it's very time consuming as well. But, once you get into that elective office, there's a great deal of responsibility that goes with that.
It's hard work, and it's a lot of hours. When I was interviewing people, I was told, oh, it will only be 10 to 20 hours a week. Unbelievably. You have all the preparation, the homework to do, and then you need to be out and listen to the schools. And, people call me even now at, Sunday morning. I know they're not at church, and neither am I, but, I'm getting the calls, the complaints, and the concerns. So I think that it is a heavy commitment. It's a heavy. I don't know how people who are still working do that. Who have another job. For me, I was retired, and then I had to resign the AmeriCorps Vista program once I got elected.
Well, also, not only the responsibility. The school district is a vast organization.
It's huge. Yep.
With thousands of employees, thousands of staff, responsibility to families and students, and your teachers as well as a budget both for capital and operating costs. That's significant.
Right, and it's heavily regulated, both at the federal level and at the state level in terms of what you can and what you can't do. So, and we have to follow all those rules. Some cases we weren't following all the rules well, primarily in the financial area.
Which, during your elected office in 2010, you came on, bright-eyed and wanting to make some significant contributions. But during your first term of office, there came a point, Ms. Carpenter, where there's some serious issues occurred. And
Yes.
through the leadership of the board and community outreach, things had to be changed. To be it went through a financial meltdown.
Yes.
There were changes at the very highest level of the school district. You had the resignation of a superintendent.
Right.
Financial issues were in turmoil, to put it succinctly. And you found yourself in your first or second year of elected office in the middle of this. And as vice chair and soon to be chair, the responsibility for kind of resolving this was placed squarely in front of you.
Yes, and when I would have to say at all those jobs I've had, the banking, the law, work, studies, and I passed the bar, but I never practiced law, and all the nonprofit work that I had done, it kind of prepared, and the teaching prepared me for this. I really had an approach that I really know how an organization, a business, is supposed to run.
Right.
And the things that needed fixing, we set about fixing, which was nepotism. You don't hire your relatives because that creates morale problems, and the cronyism. And then you hire the best possible people for the job. And we weren't an effective district. We had slipped about 20 notches in rank. It was very, very bad. And then we put an audit committee in, a citizens audit committee as watchdogs over the money. We were cited by the state for being the poster child for bad financial practices. And then we established a citizens panel, a review panel, representing all sectors. Every board member got to appoint four people to come together and screen candidates. So we had to go through that discipline. But that was the right thing to do. I mean, I know the right things to do, and so that was fine. In the middle of all this, in the middle of trying to fix this, I had a breast cancer diagnosis. So I had to go through a couple of surgeries and radiation. So I found my inner strength and my stamina. Somehow I was able to stay focused on getting this organization fixed and getting other people to work with us
Right.
to fix it. It's not a job you can do alone.
And I must point out, Ms. Carpenter, undergoing your personal, health issue, it's significant. It plays, a heavy role upon your heart and your head at the same time.
Yeah.
But I think there was a driving force within you to say, I can get through this. What can I do to get the school district through this?
I'm very determined.
And
I want to
think
fix
it. One of the key things that you were able to bring to fruition was the fact of this citizen oversight committee, because you had this tremendous financial turmoil that the district was going through. There was a lack of trust, a lack of transparency that was developing or had developed.
Exactly.
But you came through this with the citizens oversight advisory thing that was going to be looking at each and every transaction that the district made to make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. And that's a significant effort to put the train back on the tracks.
Right, we had, it had derailed, but we had a lot of help. One of the co-chair that superintendent search committee, Dr. Vogel, is a super person and very well connected, and we got the Florida Association through him, district school superintendents, to do a study in 2013 of our business and financial operations. We had people come in and tell us what we were doing wrong, which was a lot. They recommended that we outsource internal audit, which we did. That was hard. And I have to say this, I took no pleasure in the fact that some people weren't doing their job and had to leave, and like the superintendent. I mean, he wasn't doing the job. And you take no pleasure in people falling down on the job or having to fire them. When you hire people, you want them to do the best possible job they do, and you support them. So that's, but we got through that. I mean, there were some little variations in all the activities that were going on. I would say we've had the good, the bad, and the ugly. Right now, we're at the good.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that's a key part of how far the district has progressed.
Correct.
From that, early 2010, 2012, period of time. But, one of the things that you, as not only the chair, but as a school board member, were able to do is to work together as a group, most of the time.
Most of the time.
and work together, for the betterment of the district. And I think clearly one of the key things is that the leadership, as you as chair, to maneuver through those tough details that you had to make tough decisions how best to move forward.
Right. I think that everybody who runs for an office like school board, gets elected, is there for noble reasons. You want to help the children learn. And that isn't to say some people want to use it as a stepping stone for another political office, but I have a lot of respect for all of my colleagues. One of my happiest moments was running the surprise tribute for Barbara Harvey.
Remarkable achievement, and for those people that weren't able to attend, you and a committee of your put together a
Lynette
wonderful,
Edwards and her daughters,
a very elaborate tribute.
with your help.
Well, a very small part of our help, but it was this elaborate tribute to Miss Harvey for her years of service as she retired.
Yeah, she was 16 years on the school board, which is a lot. And she had seen a lot of changes gone on. And she's a wonderful human being. And fortunately for her, her family is close by, so she doesn't have to pack it in and move 1,500 miles.
But but I must say, when she walked into Pier 22 to the surprise event that you organized, she was truly shocked and pleased, and was very flattered by this attention that she was given for her service to this community.
Yeah, she deserved it. Yeah. She deserved it. She's done a wonderful job in this community.
So you've gone through the turmoil of that first term, elected in 2010, bright-eyed, moving into, wanting to do the best for students and families and faculty. into a period of time where the bottom just fell out, and as that in your out years you decided, well, we need to rebuild, we need to re-strengthen, we need to refocus on things. In 2014 you said, I have not had enough of this yet. I'm going to run again for office. So that was, I think, if I may, was the fact that you felt that your work wasn't done, that you needed to be there to accomplish the rest of this thing, to right the ship.
Right. The work wasn't done in 2014. We, with the aid of the Superintendent Search Committee, we brought in a new superintendent in 2013, Mr. Mills, and then Dr. Green, as she was part of that, the candidates, and she was got the second highest number of votes, and so he became superintendent and she became deputy. There was even more turmoil, and the finances are easy to fix. Money is fungible. It doesn't mean anything except for its bartering function, but the finances were the easy part of the culture. Wasn't fixed, a culture of accountability and discipline, and so there was a lot going on in that 2014, 2015 timeframe. So Mills left, and then we finally appointed, even though there was a move to have another national search, and there was so much support, community support for Dr. Green, and it was obvious that she was the #2 candidate just 2 years prior. So we put her on board. Charlie Kennedy brokered that. I said, let's try it for here. And, we did that. So I think she's done a good job. I think we're heading in the right direction, and we have to stay that way. So, yeah.
And I think during this period of time, too, and I'd like to hear your comment, you continue to solve and remedy and strengthen the fiscal policies that the district had.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, you should be very proud that the fiscal responsibilities and fiscal strength of the district is at an all-time high. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yes, our bond rating has gone up. We're now more credit-worthy, and nobody's looking over our shoulders the way they were.
As the state was a few years
We just
before.
had a very clean audit to the credit of the finance department and the CFO. They've got the message. We have Shannon Company as the auditors. We get the audit committee. Morris Stevenson Lovelace do our external audit. The auditor general is here. We get audited a lot.
And I think that's to your credit that you welcome this, and you've set standards and practices that are not only important, but they're critical to the financial success of the district, but also to building that community trust and confidence.
One thing I found when I was in banking, when the auditors came in, there was a hush over the place, and woe to the person who wasn't doing it right, because that person wouldn't be there the next day. I mean, the power of the auditor, to make sure things were done right. As a governmental organization, we're not that quick to respond in terms of accountability with someone who may not be doing the job right. We don't fire them as quickly as the private sector does.
But looking at it as well as the financial responsibilities are because of the fact that it's such a big district, and there's millions of dollars involved. This is a critical part, but a part of the responsibilities of a school board member. They're pretty diverse. You have a wide variety of specific tasks which all school board members have, correct?
Yes. There's only one reason we want the money to be done right, is that so the resources, the financial resources, can go to the classroom and those that support children. That's the only reason. We are limited in our authority. We can hire 3 people: the board attorney, the auditor, and the superintendent. It's up to the superintendent to hire everybody else. She has all 7. We have 7,700 employees.
It's amazing.
It's huge. It's hundreds of millions of dollars.
But that oversight and that confidence that you now have in your superintendent, Dr. Green, and your board attorney, and your auditing system continues to build that trust that we talked about. But among the among the many responsibilities that as a member, I mean, you're looking at long-range planning, you're looking at curriculum, you're looking at academic growth and excellence. There's all of these things that you're constantly evaluating and asking the tough questions for to see how best that district can improve. And because it's such a big district with a wide variety of employees, there's always issues that are coming and going. So at every school board meeting or every workshop you have, there's this constant evaluation and hard questions to be asked.
Well, that's our job, is to ask questions, and that's how we learn, is what's going on, and it's the staff's job to answer the questions and to think about things. So that is the whole process. The range of employees, and like 7,700 employees and 49,000 students and all their families, not everybody is going to fit into that bell curve in the middle and behave themselves. So, once in a while, somebody does something wrong and either they get arrested or they get terminated, and that's going to happen with that number of people.
I would say it's like a large corporation.
Exactly, it is a large corporation.
You're probably larger than some corporations that are out there.
We're the biggest in the county.
And from time to time, you have personnel issues that you have to deal with. You have policy issues, procedural issues that you have to look at and say. And of course, you have Dr. Green, who's has such great foresight and intuition on these, kind of guiding you. But at the same time, as a member, as a school board member, one has to see the full gamut of how that decision is going to be implemented, what's in the best interest of the district, and is that keeping with the standards and practices and policies of the board? Right,
and we have to follow the rules. And in the past, they didn't follow the rules. And you follow the rules, and you can't run by exceptions, because that makes inconsistencies, and it's not fair. It's not fair. So just in the whole personnel area, if you hire your relatives or your brother-in-law, that creates terrible staff morale because they think there's a double standard. Other employees will think there's a double standard. So we do have to follow standards and in the rules. And it's up to the superintendent to enforce the rules and that we've set and we've approved. We've had very few in the last 2 or 3 years employee discipline issues, which is very nice.
And I think that really stems from the leadership and that you've implemented. But one big issue, and it's getting even bigger as we speak, is growth and development. As a school board member, it's really important. It weighs heavy on you to see, where do we go next? You don't want classrooms that are crowded. You don't want schools that are crowded. So you always have to be looking at that growth, whether it's a new school or classroom hours or whatever the case may be, and how does one pay for that growth too? These are huge issues that face you as a member.
Well, they are huge issues, and Manatee County continues to add new housing, and it's an attractive place to live. And it is. I love Manatee County. I think it's a fabulous place, and we can't exceed the class size amendment, which the voters passed in 2002. So we cannot have overcrowding in the classrooms, and unfortunately we have to add portables now because we can't build schools at the rate that we need to. The building for the schools is a combination of impact fees plus capital outlay. The state is not that supportive of public education. They'll give more money to charter schools.
And I think, as evidence in the most recent legislature, the legislature is looking at some impacts for charter schools and not so much for public schools. And I think there's a movement across the state asking the governor to consider this as the budget moves forward.
Well, right, and we've got some good charter schools here. We've had a couple we've had to close down, and because the students aren't learning. I think we've got about 12% of our population, last time I looked, in charter schools. If a charter school is locally controlled and high performing, I like them. I don't like the corporate charters and the ones that aren't doing the job that they need to do. Not every child learns at the same pace as others. I mean, Manatee School for the Arts up across the river on Haven Boulevard is a fabulous place.
Absolutely.
And they're bursting at the seams. They've done a great job. And so, and students want to go there. So Rowlett Academy, which is a conversion charter school, started out as one of our magnet schools. So, and I think Lincoln Middle School is talking about going charter. So that's exciting because that gives more options for the
families.
children and the families, for engagement and that sort of thing. So one size in learning does not fit all these children.
And I think too, as a school board member and two-time chair of the school board, you have to look at all of these issues, whether it's growth, whether it's charter, personnel issues, pay. You have to look at all these myriad of different issues and determine this is a good idea, but it may not be a good idea for the district. So you have to have that foresight, the kind of visioning to say, we want to do the right thing, but maybe, this isn't the right thing now. And it's a constant evaluation of what best works for the district.
Well, one thing that I think Manatee suffers from is in comparison with our next door neighbor, Sarasota. Sarasota has a much larger real estate tax base and has voted every 4 years for an extra mill, which gives them an extra $70 million. That money goes in to support teachers' salaries, to extend the school day by 30 minutes.
Right.
And the more time children are in school
On task.
The more they're going to learn. And that's why our campaign for grade level reading has one of our initiatives of school attendance.
Which is really critical, and I've seen you speak at different occasions where you talk about the importance of attendance and how families and communities can all get behind this to help increase that campaign, that emphasis on grade level reading. But there was one other question I wanted to ask you, if I may. Recently, the county had the effort to do the half-cent sales tax. Very critical for the county. How is that, good for the district, and where do you see, perhaps some of that funding being helpful?
Well, the county's half-cent sales tax, going from 6.5 to 7, was on the ballot at the referendum at the same time as extending our half-cent sales tax, which was passed in 2002.
Right.
So we were able to, both initiatives passed. The county had a task force that looked at the need and vetted the budget. Matt Caraway was involved in that. John Horn represented the school district on that effort, and Diana Green went out. She was the school district spokesperson. And we were supported in extending our half-cent sales tax. That meant we could bond out for the new high school, middle and elementary school north, where all the growth is. We will benefit from the county's half-cent, because that's all sidewalks and that sort of stuff. Lighting that really enhances what's going on. So there's some, there's reciprocity there in terms of mutual benefit. I look at what Whiting Preston is proposing, Lake Flores. Yeah.
Very attractive.
I'm hoping there'll be a neighborhood school there, which means you won't have to have a bus. Children could walk to school, and that would be great. I mean, busing costs a lot of money.
Huge issue is public transportation for the students, to pick the kids up, drop them off, and the fuel costs alone are staggering.
Well, and
the miles alone are staggering.
Hiring bus drivers. I mean, I couldn't drive one of those things. I mean, it's huge.
It's an art, it's a science. But as you move forward, and I'm glad you mentioned the role of development. It's a big part of being able to determine what schools are successful, where's a good fit for a school. The need for schools in what areas, and that's a kind of visioning process in its own to be able to determine that.
Well, we have an excellent staff under Jane Drager in that area who monitor all the trends, all the building permits that are going on. We had a study done by DeJong Richter about, schools that were losing students that were, like Orange Ridge Bullock.
Right.
So we co-located that with Rogers Garden, which is new, Orange Ridge Bullock. At some point in time, schools lose their usefulness. They get too old.
Neighborhoods change.
Neighborhoods
people move
change.
away. People
Yeah.
move to different areas. So what may have been a very successful and vibrant school 10 years ago or 15 years ago might not have the case now.
Right, that's true, and so that's an active process, measuring changes in demographics, measuring where the developments are going. Obviously, we don't need schools in areas where there are big over 55 communities.
Right.
The birth rate is not going to be happening there.
Well, as you look, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Manatee County is a burgeoning community. There's approvals for homes, in the parish area, throughout the county, at different areas. So there will be families. There's going to be an influx of students moving into different areas. So you have to really look ahead, and that's part of that, insight, vision.
It's planning.
Future building.
It's called planning and monitoring all of that, and that is done on an active basis. But I would say Manatee County has such a really good mix of retirees and families. And those retirees have been a tremendous source of volunteers for our schools. This community is filled with generous people who give of their time, talent, and treasure to help the children.
And Ms. Carpenter, I'm glad you brought that up, because I do want to take a few minutes to talk about your volunteer efforts. You've done so much for so many different organizations. We briefly talked about Take Stock in Children. You've been involved with Take Stock for many, many years. You've been a guiding force behind them, a chief cheerleader, if I may, for their programs and services. But aside from that, the Reading Pals program that you're involved with the United Way is really a unique way of getting families and organizations involved so they can help their children.
Well, both of those organizations were weekly commitments of my time. And I don't think any school board member can do his or her job without being in the schools and really seeing what's going on.
That's a good point.
And seeing what the teachers' challenges are, seeing how the children are behaving, seeing what the children are doing, what they respond to. I was with the Reading Pals program since its inception. I've been with Take Stock since 2009, since I was an AmeriCorps Vista person. And it was very hard last week. I've been mentoring a young woman over at Bayshore High for 3 years. And
She graduated?
No, she didn't graduate. I got the notice that my replacement had been selected. I thought, I'm irrelevant now. But what we did was I set a time up where my replacement, I'm redundant, I'm more than a lame duck.
It's not a replacement in spirit, I'm sure. It's just another person that's going to be stepping into your shoes for a period.
To mentor her, so I introduced them, and then I had to zip off to another meeting, but I was very happy that they were able to, I was able to broker that introduction, because she'll start with her officially next fall.
We're very fortunate, that we've done a few things with Take Stock in Children over the years. It's a wonderful organization. But for you to be that mentor, to meet with that student year after year, to have that kind of one-on-one, to provide them with the benefit of your knowledge and expertise, and just a smile and a willing ear to listen to them, it's got to be very rewarding.
Well, it is very rewarding, but it's also about seeing what's going on, for example, in high school, how the kids are, and how the adults are. Are there issues?
Right, exactly.
And so you can,
issues at home.
Yeah, and you can spot that readily. So in volunteering, and I hear from other volunteers about what their observations are. So it's good. And our community partners, whether it's the United Way or Take Stock, have all been, and the Chamber of Commerce in this community is fabulous. Ever since I've known them for 25 years ago, they have been fabulous.
and they really contribute a great deal.
They do. They do.
And continue to do so. But one of the other key things that you've been involved with, and I may have mentioned this at the very beginning, is the Children's Services Advisory Board, which is a group of individuals that look at applications through the process, the budget process, and recommends funding for a wide variety of different programs.
Well, the Children's Services Advisory Board was established in '91 by the vote of the taxpayers in Manatee County to tax themselves a third of a mil.
For children programs.
For children's programs, at-risk children. And right now it generates $11, $12 million a year. It's not a lot compared to our budget, but it's a lot for Boys and Girls Club or Early Learning Coalition who help, these children. And I was elected by my fellow board members to that board. We meet monthly except in the spring when we review every proposal. It's a lot of work in the March, April, and May timeframe.
It's a lot of work to be looking at all these, and there's so many great organizations out there, and there's so many great needs out there. To sit with your fellow board members and to evaluate and look at each and every proposal, see, we can do this, but we can't do this. It's got to be a very difficult process.
It's kind of heart-rending because you wish you had more money. You wish you had more money, but what we've established, we're very disciplined in our approach because we score them according to the board and the outcomes, and now we've moved to an outcomes-based funding. Let's say, how much did you move the needle in terms of changing behavior?
And I think that's great. I think that's a really important way to do
things,
and it's been very successful. And I think having somebody with your background and expertise on the Children's Services Advisory Board is actually a benefit to those organizations because you have that ability to evaluate, to say, this is working, this may be not working so much, and to provide that insight to them.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to take a few moments, if I may, to talk about what I think is really a signature program for Manatee County. And believe me, there's a lot. And we do a lot of different programs, so we should know. But one of these programs is Christmas in August, sponsored by the Kiwanis Foundation, the Kiwanis Club of Bradenton. This is an organization that continually gives back to the community. But Christmas in August is unique because it's focused on children, on homeless children, children in need, and it provides such a wide array of services and resources to children each and every year. And you've been involved with it from the beginning.
From the beginning. Mm-hmm.
And it's grown, and you've been chairperson of this, and you can see the growth and the development of this over the years. They've added resource. Children come, they get backpacks, haircuts, medical exams.
A family photo. Many of them would not have a family photo.
It's an amazing thing. You have entertainment and hot dogs, and this is done in August because school starts. And the key ingredient here, please, tell me, differently, is to have these children prepared and ready for school.
To be successful in school, it started in 2011. Tom Mosley started it. Mm-hmm. Sharon Barhorst had been chairman after Tom, and then I was chairman in 15 and 16. This year I'm co-chairman, and I'm backing off. I'm turning it over. Kiwanis's sole mission is helping children all around the world and in our local community. We've seen some copycats of Christmas in August. We've seen some spin-offs from it. People decide
which is very flattering.
Which is people decide to, do a portion of it, like the blessing bags, and Leadership Manatee has just joined us, and so we have a lot of community organizations. We have hundreds of volunteers. Last year, I think it was 535 children, and we probably didn't have 500 volunteers. Maybe we had 350 volunteers.
Yeah, a lot of volunteers. You have no shortage of volunteers because people just want to chip in and help.
People want to help the homeless, and you look at a place like Turning Points, this community wants to help the homeless. Last year I did 12,000 steps on my Fitbit from 5 o'clock in the morning until noontime.
And I think, too, one of the key things is as this has grown, I think it went from backpacks and hot dogs and hamburgers to the full extent now is that the students from LECOM come, and they provide dental.
Good
Dr. Tinsworth is there. They're doing dental exams. The LECOM people give you physical exams. You've also added in a job resource capacity for family members who are there. It's just a wide variety of different aspects that strengthen, the ability of that student, that child, to be successful in school.
Right, and 1 year, we have the typical agencies like Goodwill and the Salvation Army and Career Source, but then a couple of years ago, 2 days before the event, I heard through the network that St. Armand's Bakery was looking for workers.
Right.
And they would come, and a lot of our families speak Spanish, and they were looking for Spanish-speaking workers, and they brought 300 loaves of bread to give away.
I think it's great.
It was really sweet. The truck backed up, and that was good. This year, we're going to have the monster trucks from Feld Entertainment.
Another big draw to it.
And there's soccer and baseball and
people get gift cards. They get gift cards for shoes. It's a wide variety. But I think the overriding thing here is the commitment of Kiwanis, and under your guidance and under your effort, this program has continued to grow, and it really is a wonderful tribute to the generosity of people in our community to want to give back, to make sure that these children who are most at risk have the greatest opportunity.
Right, and I didn't do this by myself. We have hundreds of volunteers, and that's central to Kiwanis' mission is helping children. And so I have gotten more myself out of being a member of Kiwanis than I think I've given.
Well, you've certainly given back a great deal, Ms. Carpenter, and you should be very proud not only of that contribution to this community, but all of the others. Unfortunately, we're kind of winding down here a little bit, and I want to give you an opportunity to say a few words about those things that you're most proud of, those things that you feel that, you wanted to have succeed, and through your efforts have succeeded. And I think, there's a lot of things that you should be very proud of. So, but what are those ones that kind of stick out to you?
Well, I've mentioned honoring someone like honoring Miss Harvey who did a fabulous job, and honoring volunteers and organizations that help children is really the gratitude award. That's good. Recruiting more volunteers to the district, whether it's for the audit committee or it's for being reading pals, and using our networks for greater good. It's bittersweet to leave. It's hard. It was a hard decision, and I have 2 daughters and 4 grandchildren. They didn't want me to run in 2014. They wanted me home then. So, every holiday I kept getting, when are you coming home to be with us, instead of helping all those other strangers, so, and my younger daughter was on the phone this morning, are you coming for the concert this Saturday? It was that sort of thing, so I was beginning to feel guilty. Anyway, I think in setting an example, but a firm example that we require accountability, and recruiting more people to the table, and we have staff who are doing that,
right?
And that's excellent, and honoring them, and recognizing those contributions, which are critical. The school system cannot take care of the children by itself,
right? It's a community effort.
What is the saying? It takes a village?
It is.
It is.
It does.
It takes a village to raise children. And so that's what I think is really important. And fortunately, we have a boatload of retirees, and we have a lot of senior citizens who want to help and who live here year-round, and people who care about children, and businesses who are willing to help.
And there is, and you've reached out to the business community as well, and also you, under your kind of leadership with other members of the board, have ensured that we have kind of a stable leadership at the very top, people who want to contribute in a very determined, set, and functional manner. So your success is multifaceted, Ms. Carpenter. And if I may say so, even though this is a political position, you're far from the normal politician. And I would say, you are a true public servant who have contributed and given back to this community in a multitude of ways, not only as an elected official, but also is that community supporter. And this community has been very fortunate to have you here and for all of the contributions that you've made. But I'm sure this community wishes you well and continued success as you sit with those grandchildren, and I'm sure you're going to come and visit.
I will. I'll be here in August for Christmas in August for homeless children, and on August 5th, so I'm very happy that I can do that.
You just can't leave that Christmas in August alone, can you?
No, but the new co-chair is Linda Gressa. She'll do just fine. She'll do just fine.
Again, this community owes you a great deal of gratitude, Ms. Carpenter. You've been through the hard times, you've been through tough times. You've made
Thank
the
you.
school district into something that people can be proud of. Once more, and and it's on that road to success. So the debt of gratitude for Manatee County for all of your efforts throughout the years.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us on this special edition of Up Close on METV. I'm Charles Clapsaddle. We'll see you again next time.